services come within that period. And yet your comp scheme is telling your rep to go to the end of the lease to that customer. So depending on your model, you're only selling to 66% of your customers. Sorry, 33% of your customers at best. And I would argue it's probably less than that if you truly look. Certainly, we believe, our whole methodology is to sell to the customers. It's all about what's my end of lease book looking like for the next 12 months. I've got this many customers coming up. The rep doesn't go back and say, hey, we've got this new software I found. I can go back to those customers I sold a machine a year ago. The comp system doesn't work. They will never do it. So that's something to think about. So are we really ready? And team selling compensation is another thing. How many people go in to close a sale now? I mean, one of the things is the devil is in, someone was in a meeting yesterday and they know I just cringe if I hear the term overlay. You said, how many people do they pay on that $100 of revenue? About 7. Okay, that's an interesting way. So how do you do that? But you talk in, and I maybe use an extraordinary example. With one of our Fortune 100 customers, I went to a meeting and we had 19 people wanting to come and visit the customer. I mean, what the hell are you all doing here? Well, I'm here because you're here. My manager wanted to come, and I'm the production specialist. I'm the scanning specialist. I'm the workflow specialist. I'm this specialist. And you look at this and you go, how do you control this? So this is the organizational design piece of compensation. So the other thing is, what is your value proposition when you get to services? And one of the things that, certainly from a manufacturing point of view, people say, oh, does that mean Ricoh's turning into IBM? Does that mean we're turning into Accenture? And it's absolutely not. Our point is we're services-led, but technology-enabled. At the end of the day, we want to deploy a core technology, print, fax, scan. We want the device. But we need to be services-led to do that. Because otherwise we're just competing on price. We're not adding value to the customer. So services-led, technology-enabled, and then it's people. Because someone has to put this stuff together. This stuff doesn't come off. This stuff doesn't just come off a catalog. I mean, you can walk into a customer and sell them the dream, but when it actually says, okay, now make it work. Now you need very different skills. You need people in the IT arena. You need people who understand workflow. So this is how we build a value proposition, which is really sums up everything I talked about, which is services-led. So what services are relevant to you? What do you feel comfortable your customers need? What do you feel comfortable that you can manage either internally or through partners? But at the end of the day, it's people-driven. And I think that's where, we have to remember the biggest asset you have is your relationship with your customers. It is so strong. It is so loyal. I don't think I've ever gone to a dealer that says, well, most of my customers don't really like me. They love you. So, but you need to bring them something new. So this is really what we call customer-focused solutions, which is a combination of products, services, intellectual property, focused on a specific business problem that drives measurable business value. We've got to get out of this. I need my 0.04 cents to go to 0.0035 cents. You've got to change the equation and say, look, we are saving you thousands of hours. We are saving you, you're avoiding lawsuits, you're collecting receivables. How many receivables do you not collect because you lose the claim? Or the insurance paperwork is late, or you lose customers. So it's a very different value proposition to bring that measurable business value. So with that, I've spoken for my 40 minutes. I hope that's given you some insight. It's, like I said, this is a massive topic I tried to condense. But with that, I'm happy to take questions. I love silence. I have a 1-minute rule where I button really fast. No questions? Well, I guess. We really have no one had, thank you. I was going to say, someone told me dealers are shy and retired. Now, if it's 5 o'clock and the bar was about to open, I'd be getting it entirely.
So let's talk about Ricoh's future. 5 years ago, you were in growth mode.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do now?
Growth mode be number one. No, I mean, from Ricoh's point of view, obviously there's, you know, in the Americas, a lot's happened in 5 years. I've been in the US in 5 years. We've done the Icon acquisition. You know, we've been through a fairly torrid time, to be blunt. Maintain the number one, but I think what we want to do is really, we want to transform to a services-led company and get it right. And we believe there's a huge amount of value to be the place to be for an employee and for a dealer to be a partner of ours. But to actually bring value to the customer, we need to be relevant. We need to build a brand. People want to come to Ricoh because we're actually solving their solutions. And I think one of the reasons I feel good about that is we have unbelievably good case studies where we've done great things. The difficulty is doing it repetitively and continually across the country or across the world. So I think, you know, we have a lot of great core technology, but core technology is not enough now. So I think it really is building a portfolio of services that really adds value to our customers. A lot of our approach now, as I said, a lot of this is based on what we're looking at, verticals. You know, there's some verticals that are showing tremendous growth, healthcare. You know, the finance vertical is still growing. You know, so looking for those opportunities, but we have to be a lot smarter to do it. So my view is what we're trying to do is, or what, you know, our vision is to transform to be a services-led company, but really to maximize, you know, and then through that achieve, you know, growth. I mean, right now growth is tough out there. You know, Japan has gone through a problem with a strong yen and all the different, you know, it's been a tough environment from a manufacturing point of view. But we've got to go away from that. You know, we've got to maintain the manufacturing strength, but bring in those other services from outside and really bring extra value from our customer. So, I mean, I guess that's probably my shortest answer to that question.
I have a follow-up.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I guess the biggest concern I have, or the biggest question is parking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who needs who? Right?
Yeah.
Most of us have gotten successful in this business by not parking.
Correct. That's what I say. Your entrepreneurial heritage is your strength.
So how do we trust someone else to bring them into our account that we own, that love us? I mean, that's
No, I mean, I did know, and while I was saying, one of my honest experiences at Champs, it's worked best when it's been forced. So you had to bring it. You had no alternative. And then by bringing us in, hey, that wasn't so bad. But it's a huge barrier. But it's not only that trust, but it's trust with software vendors, it's trust with, so forget manufacturer, but I mean, I'm just saying, this is a real, you know, this is actually a real tough, you know, these are the soft questions that you wake up overnight on that says, can I really trust that person? And you need to know that. And a lot of it's the chemistry. I mean, let's face it, your customers trust you because you know them very well. They trust you, the person. So that's where I think the texting is going to fall apart, because how do you trust the other end of the text? It's going to be an interesting little thing, but.
And Ricoh, I saw living there, and Ricoh has been notoriously my nemesis.
We've had a few incidents in the past. Well, I've come in to do my job, so I don't want to talk about the past, but the facts are, you know, there's many stories where we're working on this. This is my biggest single, you know, one of my biggest single tasks of convergence is, you know, we had a beautiful trust relation for a long time. You broke that trust. And I'll tell you, to get it back is hard work. So, but the reality is, you know, in which case, if you can't trust, you have to bring it all in on house, and that's a different, you know, now, you know, many people have bought software companies, many people have bought practices, so I mean, there is you don't have to trust, you can bring it in. But I think when you do that partnering model, it probably brings you the easiest way to grow, but I think you hit it on the head, it's tough. So,
What do you see as your biggest challenge in getting hardware-based people to become trusted advisors with the technology that's out there, where the customers know more, and these people will push harder?
I think there's two levels there's two different things. From a sales point of view, you need to understand the concept of the problem you're solving, not the technical details of how you solve the problem. So I think we've made, mistakes have been made where you try and teach the rep how this works in a Linux environment versus a virtualized server environment versus this versus that. The rep can't sell and do that. You have to be able to say, I can help you do your payroll processing or your accounts receivable processing or claims management. I can tell you how to do that. And you've really got to build them the same scenarios that you build them when you launch a product. I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things that we looked at is we basically gave our sales reps a catalog of here's every single service we can offer, go sell it. The reps sort of wandering around. I got 16 different softwares I could pick. I got 50, give them, look for customers with these problems and then have a technical resource behind them that can go in and have the discussion. How do I design the technology to work? So I think you have to split the two. I think, sometimes the rep wants to understand how the technology works. You can't understand how every technology works. You have to understand what business problem it solves. And I think that's part of, that's the way we're approaching it, is give the reps a playbook on the business problem they're looking for, the right questions to ask to get into the customer. And that's why I said, looking at horizontals and verticals, an insurance company is managing claims. A doctor's office is going to have medical records issues. A manufacturing company is going to have, information that has to go in the product. It's going to have warranty claims. So I think you need to we're looking at packaging up those business problems. The technology behind it, whether we're solving it with software A, software B, software C, they sort of don't need to know that. You need a separate team of designs. So I think splitting the sale and the design is probably the key thing. But I think depending on the experience of the rep, I think from a marketing point of view, you have to package it like a product. It's a business solve. This is the business solution we have for a small doctor's office. One or two, that's it. Architects, one or two, that's it. And then behind the scenes. And then obviously the larger accounts, it becomes custom. If you want to do something different, we'll bring engineers on site. But that's how I answer that question. Yes, sir?
Yes, I sort of have two questions. In reference to compensation, on the declining splits, where have you done any forecasting on what it's going to take to entice these people to continue to use paper versus sending everything to the cloud as a package and so and on compensation on the sales rep side regarding the declining revenue on the box?
I think clearly if you can design a process that creates output for print, that's the perfect scenario. I can create a service at the end of the day will print out lots of paper. I think one issue is still device management as to where they're printing. There's a lot of, from our point of view, there's a lot of documents that are printed in a customer's environment and aren't printed on our device. I don't know about you, but how many of your customers do you have every single print device in versus HP printers they got somewhere else, or old printers here, there, and everywhere? So I think searching for those prints and coming up, but it's sort of conflicts. I mean, one of the things that's a bit of a conflict here, the best solution may be to stop printing. So you leave with a service, and the reality is, I'll turn you paper. You're going to go paperless anyway. I'll turn you paperless. We're the guys that sell you things to put things on paper. So there is an internal conflict, and I think recognizing what the best you can do within the customer is probably the best thing you can do. From a sales rep compensation thing, if you're in a declining hardware market, whether it's an A3 box going to an A4 box, so the ASP has just dropped significantly for the same amount of clicks, selling that 30,000 a month quota just means you've got to sell twice as much. So I think the reality is that's why, in order for our comp models to work, we've got to package solutions, and we've got to give them something else to sell. So it really is finding other things, because that model is going to creep it if we can't. It's a problem. It is a challenge. So I think we're looking at, You know, we need to provide a portfolio that a sales rep can live off and generate, while generating revenue for them and generating revenue for us. But I think you have, you know, this is one where you will have to change. To me, it's a question of how, you know, what is the speed of the curve? You can read one person saying it's going to decline 3% a year for the next 5 years, and you can see someone else saying, well, we think at some point it's going to, you know, dramatically drop, while others saying, well, we think it's going to grow again. I mean, it's, you know, but I think, I would say finding more things for those sales reps to sell as a portfolio. I mean, the biggest single asset you've got is your relationship with your customer. So if you're their trusted advisor in this space, how do you expand that space where they're still buying it from you? And a lot of dealers I see have that success. You know, you have the relationship that if you stand behind another product, they'd rather buy it from you than someone else. I'm not suggesting you go and start selling their car fleet or whatever, but, you know, alongside that would be the best answer. Yes, sir.
You had mentioned a 16% reduction over what timeline of clicks?
Well, 60%, that's one of those cut sheet paper from an industry group, so I'm not sort of saying it's, we haven't seen a 16% reduction ourselves. And that's, I think when you look at cut sheet and you start looking at some of the other things, you start bringing in broadsheet newspaper printing. So we haven't seen a 16, but I can point to individual customers that have dropped dramatically more than 60. We haven't seen that. I think well, I think the answer here is they're using the 1 year. I mean, that 16% is a 1 year timeline. And I think, you know, but bear in mind you've got other factors happening because of the production end. You've got offset moving to digital. So you're bringing, you know, so on one hand you've got paperless happening. There's another big transition of offset into our arena in the production space. So there's a bit of a counter effect to that. But I think looking at black to color is also another thing. I mean, if you're looking at 1.7 versus 4.7 versus 4.5 or 5 or 6, then, you know, trying to get those color copies up is clearly something we've done. So, you know, we measure very closely what our color, you know, we see black and white slight declining, color copies going up. So that sort of offsets. Okay, I think we've sort of got one more question perhaps. Yes, sir?
So, have you analyzed us as your customer base? So, how many Ricoh dealers have we converted to services led? And is there a revenue needed, like greater than 5 million? I mean, have you looked at that?
I would no, and well, I think we've looked. We work very closely with our partners, and we have obviously a huge range of dealers. So I mean, we've got dealers who are. I mean, a lot of the dealers are being very, you know, the bigger, some of the bigger ones make significant investments in software relationships, in expertise to bring in on staff. And they've grown. Some of the smaller ones, it's tough to make some of the investments behind, which is why that becomes more the trust factor that says, well, I have the people. How do I make them available to you so that you could, but you still maintain the customer relationship? I think, you know, we've made it clear that the dealer channel is a very important part of our channel, you know, is a part of our future. So we need them to be successful. So where we can try and provide those resources to make them success, and it very much is a case-by-case. So one of the things that we've done differently as it relates to the dealers is we're trying to have a very different conversation with each individual dealer. What is it you want to do, and how can we help you? Rather than, I need a 20% growth in this, and I want a 5% growth in that, and I want you to sell more of these. That sort of doesn't work anymore. So some dealers are interested in production space, some dealers aren't. Some dealers are interested in certain types of software, some dealers aren't. So I think we're trying to move to the sort of a much more open perspective, which says, what do you want? You know, what do you want from us, and how do we tailor a plan for you to help you grow? Because we need you strong. It's the hardware pull-through. I mean, one of the things this is the, you know, one of the messages I give this, you know, talk to some of the employees is, what does that mean? We're going to stop making hardware? I don't know. Services-led, technology-enabled. We still need to sell product. Selling the product is going to be different side. So I think we have a very deep understanding of a lot of our dealers, and we have very, very different relationships because we have dedicated dealers, we have dealers that are dual line that favor us, dual line that favor someone else, And, you know, so it makes it a one-on-one relationship. But, okay, well, I think time's up, but I am going to be around, happy to take questions. So I'm glad to kick your conference off, and I could have been in New York and the New East under a lot of snow. So thank you very much for having me.